got what we got, and who knows, he could always come back.
Stay tuned.
Yep, and if we move into the next, the Age of Chaos is probably what happened next. You know, again, because it's Discord, we have very little evidence, very little information about Discord. Even, we have less information about Discord than we do about Celestia and Luna. And that's saying something, because we know next to nothing about them. But there do exist a few clues, and mostly it's the fact that when we figure out Discord's backstory, it all has to do with the elements of harmony, because that's when they're first introduced and put into play. But we also know that given Tyrik's knowledge of Discord and his imprisonment, I have to believe that Discord's reign occurred between Sombra's war, but before the Tyrik crisis, because when Tyrik's in... Clearly, Tyrik did not know about he didn't know that Discord had escaped, which means, ironically enough, he doesn't escape until the third episode of season 2, and Discord appears in the first 2 episodes of season 2. So that he actually wouldn't have any knowledge about Discord escaping. So the fact that he knew that Discord had been imprisoned in the first place implies that he must have known, at least heard about or known Discord prior to that occasion, putting his instances after Discord's. So, what are the connections between Discord and mythology? Well, he's obviously implied by the trickster gods of myth and science fiction. What is his most obvious reference?
Q.
Q. Everyone say it. Q. Yes. From Star Trek. He was based upon and voiced by
John Demansky.
Yep. Who is currently stealing people away from my audience.
You're doing a bad job.
I think reverse that. All right. Yeah, no. People who are going to his panel are paying to see it. They're going there. But I'm not paying you to come here. All right. So, omnipotent, exceedingly vain, both Discord and Q, especially after Discord's reformations, use their powers to mess with the main characters, but in a way that's meant to aid in their personal growth. Q's entire goal in Star Trek is to help humans become more like Q. So, you know, you see kind of those implications, especially in episodes like Three's a Crowd and Twilight's Kingdom. Like, Twilight's Kingdom, Discord's not even hiding it. There's a part of me that doesn't even think he's actually a villain in that one. That he specifically went out of his way to get the rainbow powers, which again is the rainbow of light, even more so.
And then there's the episode where he purposely leaves her out during that reshelving.
Yeah, there's that episode, which I think might just be him being a jerk. Yeah, I mean, but you know, trickster gods appear, you know. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. What happened? Where'd he go? There we go. Yay! All right.
What?
He's looking at his computer.
There's like the thing didn't pop up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a weird thing with my computer. I'm seeing something entirely different from what you guys are seeing. So it's a little hard to follow sometimes. You know, beyond Q, which is the most obvious connection, trickster gods actually appear in just about every single mythology. And he is the archetypal trickster god. You know, we have characters like the Coyote from Native American lore, Eris and Discordia from Greco-Roman myth, which is where he gets his name, Anansi the Spider in West African myth, the Puka in Celtic myth, Lilith from Babylonian myth, and Loki from Germanic myth. Avengers fans?
Yeah.
More like Norse mythology here.
Right. Bible fans?
Yeah, Bible.
Bible.
Does Christian count? Technically, you're
Is there any other kind of
Bible fans or Bible thumpers?
Basically be us right here.
Okay. Whatever your fantasy book you like to read is fine. Shots
with this one.
fired!
Missiles launched.
Oh, he walked out. Oh no.
I'm gonna stick with this fantasy book that I need to finish.
Alright, okay. I'm not even gonna go there. What does it say up there? I lost count, it's hard to see.
All of these characters share.
Okay, all of the trickster gods share very similar qualities. They're all active agents of chaos who employ guile, wit, and deceit in order to achieve their end goals. Most are malevolent forces, but there actually very few of them are rarely actively malicious. They'll cause misery for the fun of it, but they do occasionally do good deeds. And honestly, the spider's whole thing is that, all he was interested in is acquiring stories. So, what does he do? He engages in unique adventures for the purposes of gathering stories. Loki, funny enough, as much as, he's responsible for, the apocalypse in Norse mythology, most of his adventures are really just him kind of horsing around.
You mean the one where he turned into a female horse and bore foals?
Yeah, no. It's funny when he is the mother of Odin's warhorse.
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
so Loki is
Mythology.
Loki is he turned into a female horse, slept with something. I can't remember what.
It was
I think so. And he gave birth to a seven-legged horse that Odin rides into battle.
I think it's 8.
8? I was thinking 7. I thought it was like something
I think maybe 4 legs on this side, 4 legs on
Something like
this
that.
side.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, trickster gods in their nature are chaotic neutral. They prefer to break the wheel rather than watching it turn. To kind of quote from Game of Thrones.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Yes, that's exactly where I got it. It was midnight when I was writing this, and Game of Thrones was on the mind. And also this explains why discord can be performed, because trickster gods are not inherently malevolent. They're there for the fun of it. They're there to just mess with things. And of course you have, after the Age of Chaos, another element that's introduced is, of course, the Tree of Harmony. And it has tons of mythological references. Most common would actually be that of, obviously the Rainbow of Light. In fact, there's probably, I would be very shocked if there aren't fan fictions out there where the Rainbow of Light is buried and becomes the Tree of Harmony, and that's where the elements of harmony come in. And the idea that G1 is the prequel to G4 is a really popular fan fiction.
Headcanon territory.
It's headcanon territory. It's probably not because of Tyrek, but who knows. But beyond the G1 connection, you also get, it's tied to the archetype of the world tree, which is found throughout Indo-European and Native American mythology. Obviously the most common connection would be that of, Norse expert, how would you pronounce this one? Yggdrasil. Is that it?
No. If you watched Thor, like the Y's kind of rounds very loosely, like the tree of Yggdrasil.
Right, Yggdrasil. Thank you. That's how it's pronounced.
I think the G's are silent.
Yeah, the 2 G's are silent.
To the branches of Yggdrasil.
Yeah. Norse.
Interesting.
I'm sorry, I just got an epic rap battles of history cup. The Zeus versus Thor epic rap battle.
Continue.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting distracted. It's been a long day. After, of course, the Age of Chaos, we have the Tyrek crisis. And although it's never stated, the fact that Starscrew is referred to as young, coupled with, of course, Tyrek's knowledge of Discord's imprisonment and his susceptibility to the Tree of Harmony, and by extension, obviously, the elements, it would seem to imply that this event had to have occurred after Discord's imprisonment. Sombra's affected by the crystal heart, but not really the elements of harmony. However, Discord is infected by the elements of harmony quite clearly, and so is Tyrek, implying that those two that one necessitated the other. Almost. We're moving along fairly quick. Actually, a lot quicker than I thought we would. That's good. All right, so this would seem to imply that the Tyrek crisis is the last known event to occur before the rise of Nightmare Moon. At least until Celestia and Luna tell us about some other bottled up evil that's only now rising up from 1,000 years ago.
That's the best they
Evil
use.
cat is gonna be next something.
It seems like so convenient with these like season climaxes.
Katrina and Grogar are showing up.
From 1,000 years ago.
And of course, we still have to wait for Scorpion and Star Scroll to show up. They're still out there somewhere.
Maybe they'll show up in the Pony movie.
Maybe. All right, so, we also get interesting references to Tyrek and Scorpion coming from a distant land. They seek to conquer Equestria and its magic. Scorpion becomes a friend with Star Swirl and betraying Tyrek, ending the hostilities. Obviously the thing that gets introduced most in here, or at least the thing that plays a large role, Tartarus. We've heard about Tartarus before, but it's not until this episode that we really get what it is. It's clearly supposed to have parallels to the Tartarus of Greek mythology, complete with three-headed dog.
Equivalent of Val.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is Tartarus in Greek mythology is the primary influence for the Judeo-Christian interpretation of hell, with the combination of the Norse Helheim. However, Equestria's Tartarus actually doesn't seem that way. It doesn't actually have a whole lot of it doesn't have demonic landscapes. It's actually more akin to like the Phantom Zone from DC Comics, a sort of extra-dimensional prison. Because, Tyrek can access Tartarus just by using his magic. He opens a gate into Tartarus. Apparently this place that's supposed to be impregnable, you can just open it up and toss ponies into. That's the Phantom Zone.
Maybe he's just thinking of portals.
Maybe he's thinking of portals, but I like the idea of maybe it being an extra-dimensional thing, because somehow the idea of pony hell does not appeal to me. But there is something interesting, is that Tartarus allows for the possibility of numerous different villains to arise in the future seasons of the show. Again,
Because there seems to be more places in the thing.
yes, there are more prisons than there are prisoners.
If you're suggesting that Tartarus is a completely different dimension all by itself, then how would Cerberus kind of like run away from its gates, probably a game or something, and then get Ponyville?
Maybe
there's a portal.
I think the gate perhaps could be like a portal or something, or some way that can be accessed. And it's a guard dog that unless you have absolutely powerful magics, you can't open the portal elsewhere. Maybe there's like something like a Stargate, a long-standing portal there that anyone can walk.
And maybe Cerberus accidentally maybe left the gate open while he was having his little run, and then Tyrek kind of had an opportunity to kind of stroll out.
Probably. Okay. Let's see. Now the most common event. The Lunar Rebellion. This is easy to say that this is probably the biggest event in the 1,000 years period. It's the event that shaped the entirety of equestrian history and kickstarted everything on the show. Without the Lunar Rebellion, we don't get no season 1, episode 1 and 2. So obviously everybody knows the story. Luna, jealous of her sister's popularity, becomes Nightmare Moon and battles Celestia in order to establish eternal night. She is imprisoned in the moon for 1,000 years, and her legend hopes to create the holiday of. Did I put the holiday of Nightmare?
Nightmare Night.
Nightmare Night.
Or,
Yes.
or if you're new crap English, create the holiday celebrating Nightmare Moon.
Right. So, obviously, we're going to go into Celestia and Luna, celestial avatars. Given the central role the sun and moon play in humanity's day-to-day life, even with ancient peoples understanding the necessity of both for our survival, it's no surprise that celestial deities are found throughout human myth. You know, in some mythologies, the gods are the celestial objects themselves, whilst in others, they merely carry the objects across the sky. You know, we get clear implications to mythological characters like Ra of Egyptian myth and his barge, which carries the sun throughout the heavens and the underworld. You know, we also get, you know, Apollo and his great solar chariot pulled by flying horses. And Chandra of Hindu myth, whose lunar chariot does exactly the same thing. And, you know, the nearly divine attitudes the citizens of Equestria take towards Celestia and Luna really does kind of paint them as deities, or at least demigods to their mindset, although that could just be 1,000 years of unbroken leadership.
Or maybe since they're like maybe firstborn alicorns, they like kind of immortality.
Possibly, although I would be hard pressed to think maybe they're not the firstborn alicorns and just the first in a long while. Now, the Lunar Rebellion. It also brings about where does Nightmare Moon come from? Where does that idea of the evil night and the good glorious day come from? The superiority of the sun to the moon in myth is, honestly, it comes from the rise of agriculture. The sun is, like, farmers knew that the sun was necessary to keep plants alive. With plants you get food, with food you get life, with life you get fertility, with fertility you get the need for more food. So, you know, the cycle of life was entirely dependent on the sun. The moon, you keep track with that. The moon indicated night. You know, the night was something to be feared. You huddled around a campfire and told scary stories of the monsters that were out in the darkness to keep kids away from the darkness. So, within our entire human history, the night has always played, at least until the development of the light bulb, the night has always been something lesser, a secondary source. Now night is almost worshipped as equal in our culture. How many people are going to be staying up till like 2 o'clock in the morning for the rave?
Not me.
Or I did
No, we are not.
Or I did
No, we are not. All right, so of course this natural inclination and fascination with, you know, the favoring of the light explains our fear of eclipses. You know, Celestia and Luna's battle parallel many of the struggles that are often associated with eclipses and the explanations that are given in myth, as well as several historical events. You know, in Egyptian myth, an eclipse was seen as an attack by dark spirits on Ra's solar barge. If Ra and the pharaohs of old managed to beat back the dark horde, then the sun would continue on its course. But if they failed, then the sun would be stolen and never return. As you all could possibly imagine, Ra never lost. Of course, there's also, in Japanese mythology, Butara Kala, the Javanese.
Like the island Java.
The island of Java, which actually has a lot of influences from Hindu myth. You get Uttara Kala, you know, from like Kali, the god of the underworld. He attempts to devour the sun and the moon, as he's the sworn enemy of both, because they're kind of semi-omnipotent objects. You know, the Javanese would therefore offer sacrifices and create noise during the eclipse in order to make Kala vomit the celestial objects back up.
Gross.
Right. And of course, another good implication was in March 1st, 1504, Christopher Columbus successfully caused a lunar eclipse in order to prove to the natives of Jamaica of his supernatural powers and for them to keep providing food and supplies for his men. He had an almanac.
I think maybe in order to do that, like he knew a lunar eclipse was coming.
Oh, right, I
and
mean-
he did some fancy way to make it look like
Right,
he's
I mean-
causing the eclipse.
I mean, anyone with an almanac can figure out when lunar eclipses are going to occur, when they're going to occur, and where. So if he had access to an almanac, he had free range, and all ships carried almanacs because they helped sailors to be able to navigate the seas because they could tell what stars are going to be out at a certain time of night. They could tell you about the weather depending on the season and what you were more likely to find. But, that is the conclusion of the Lunar Rebellion. What happens afterward? Well, after the banishment, we know basically nothing. Celestia was quite boring after the 1,000 years. What happened? Well, we do know from testing 1, 2, 3 of the first celestial era of peace. We see the formation of the EU Key Guard and the Wonderbolts, with obvious connections to the Blue Angels. But beyond this, we can only really conjecture about one definitive event: the rise and fall of Griffinstone. Now, in the Journal of the Two Sisters, we meet a Griffin leader named Gregor. He's the leader of a Griffin colony. He doesn't really mention all that much about royalty or like a king, more like he's just trying to settle and find a good place to live, which makes me think that maybe Griffinstone, the Griffins weren't yet unified at that point. They were just kind of settling in their own positions after the many years of winter. Yeah, after the brutal winters of the Wendigos. Because the winters would have affected everybody, not just the poets. Now, because he doesn't mention that, we do know that the unification occurs as a result of King Grover acquiring the Idol of Boreas and unifying all the Griffins under his rule. Now, his kingdom lasted until the 14th king, Guto, lost the idol to the Aramaspi, which is actually based upon a Scythian monster which fought against Griffins in Greek myth. So the Griffins and and Aramaspi were constantly at war with each other, constantly stealing all of their stuff from each other. And Griffins appear throughout mythologies in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Central Egypt, or Central Asia, yes, it's in Egypt. But it's actually their Egyptian counterparts is probably where they get the inspiration for many of the Greek culture. The Greek and Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt probably influenced the Greek version and interpretation. And it's actually rather interesting that folklorist Adrian Mayer posits that ancient peoples might have developed the legend of griffins upon discovering ceratopsian dinosaurs, triceratops and things like that. They found those bones throughout the deserts of Asia, especially Protoceratops, which basically looks like a giant beaked, basically a gigantic bird. Larger than, when you actually look at the beaks that the ceratopsian dinosaurs possessed and these huge frills, it looked like a massive bird skull. The only thing they could really think about was, maybe we'll call this thing a griffin. But this theory is contested, as images of griffins appear in pre-classical Greek mythology as well, and they did not have access to Central Asian populations, so they probably developed the legends independently of each other, because ceratopsian dinosaurs appeared in Asia and in North America. We have never found any in Europe or Africa. So they had to have developed from somewhere else. Now, we see the connections between griffins, and that connection with them being possibly related to how we explain dinosaurs actually puts them a connection with dragons. And this is also because this was the only place I was ever going to get to talk about dragons and how I structured this panel.
I love the design of the Dragon Lord, by the way.
Yeah, Torch is a great design.
Isn't he like gigantic though? Really
Yeah.
good.
Oh yeah, he's massive. He's easily the largest dragon we've ever seen.
He's about the size of, I think, the Ursa Major.
Right. So,
I think there's strange market there.
There's a major might, but I would be hard pressed to see something quite as large as Torch.
The Tantalus was actually pretty big.
Oh yeah, the Tantalus was big, but that was sort of an artificial growth. Torch seems to have naturally gotten to that size. And of course, since we... What are the connections, though, with the dragons in My Little Pony? Tolkien. Dragons appear in nearly every culture on Earth, and most of them are the result of mutual creations through neighboring cultures. All the European cultures met with each other and had very specific ideas about what dragons look like or behave like, with a few exceptions. But some did evolve independently of each other. The Chinese dragon is very, very different from the European dragon. And as we talked about earlier, the Native American dragon, Quetzalcoatl, was very distinct and had its own unique characteristics and qualities. But, characters like Spike and Garble, they appeared in earlier generations of MLP, but just the entire way in which the dragons appear in the show, it's straight out of the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. There's not even hiding it. The designs, the intelligence, the greed-centered focus on dragons are taken from characters like Smaug and Caligon and Glaurung. Any Silmarillion fans? Any?
I love dragons.
Yay, Silmarillion! Yay!
Other dragons, Vermithrax, the last dragon, I'm the lost one.
But the interesting thing is that the dragons in Tolkien's myth aren't actually original. They're actually taken from Norse mythology, from Germanic and Norse mythology, with the dragons from Beowulf and the Nibelungen. And the reason for this is that Tolkien was a massive Anglophone. He despised the influence that French had on the language and the mythology of England. Yep, here you go. He created the Lord of the Rings to basically be a mythology of England that was Anglo-Saxon and Germanic in origin. The most famous English myth is King Arthur, which is based on Welsh and French influences. It has almost no Anglo-Saxon in it at all. He hated that. He disliked Arthurian legend to a massive extent. So, he wanted to create things that were much more in tune with Germanic and pagan origin, or a pagan influence. And of course, the popularity of Tolkien in the United States, upon the completion of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, made the Germanic pagan dragon intelligent, greedy. It made that the go-to interpretation in Western media, as opposed to the animalistic, demonic interpretation generally favored by Christian romanticism. In French myth, dragons are mindless. St. George and the dragon. You can't reason with the dragon, you slay dragons. In Germanic myth, the dragon can talk to you and possibly trick you because he's far smarter than you could ever be. But also greedy and so therefore easy to be beaten. So, that's the note on the dragons. Now we get into some of the more modern stuff. Mythology and the adventures of the main six. I love this picture, by the way. That is a fantastic picture you got.
It looks like the main six will just march into war and then caught up with the changeling army.
Yeah.
But AJ, oh yeah, she has her hat.
Right. So, we have, let's see, yes. So, many of the events which transpire in Friendship is Magic are directly correlated towards the correction of past mistakes on the part of Celestia, Luna, and others. It's kind of the sins of the father being corrected being corrected. Nightmare Moon, a correction of Celestia's banishment of Luna. Discord's return and reformation, completing the failed efforts of Celestia and Luna. Sombra and the Crystal Empire, ditto. Helping the Tree of Harmony, ditto again.
What about Chrysalis?
T-Rex attack, noticing a pattern here. There do exist, however, several notable instances and adventures which represent the main six own personal growth experiences and errors. We will be covering 4. The Changelings, their interpretation in the show and fan fiction, and their connection to Celtic myth. Twilight's ascension to Alicornhood and the rejection of divine rule in favor of enlightened rule. Kingmark Crusaders and the affirmation of self-determinism. And Starlight Glimmer and the dangers of extremism and inequality.
Kind of like today's society.
A little bit, yeah. So, Friendship is Magic provides us with very little insight into the culture and mindset of changelings. You know, throughout My Little Pony fanfiction, we have seen many authors give their own unique interpretations as to how changeling society would operate. You know, we have ideas like them being hive-minded, like the Borg from Star Trek, or insects, understandable given the appearance. We have Imperial Japan, which you get from Maternal Instinct by Magic Man. We have the corruption of flutter ponies or crystal ponies, depending on author preference. You know, but in doing research for my own fan fiction, I actually discovered that changelings are, at least in Western culture, descended from creatures of Celtic mythology. And that's why I decided to make mine Celtic. So, the Celtic changeling, also known as a stock or fetch, a young changeling, is an elvish or fairy-like creature which would spirit away infants from their parents and replace them with a young changeling. The infants would then feed off the love and affection of the parent, whilst the human infant was transformed into another changeling, continuing on the cycle. There we go. The introduction of Christianity to Celtic cultures quickly saw the changelings morph into demonic, imp-like creatures, which sought out children for their innocence. Changelings were used as a means by ancient and medieval cultures to explain young infants who experience developmental issues or sudden and unexplainable diseases. You know, because clearly it couldn't be anything the parents did, it had to be these.
A lot of parents do that these days too, playing video games and stuff.
Right. You know,
Relay Mortal Kombat.
yeah, the legend of changelings was also more than likely used to make children obey their parents. You know, if you don't behave, a changeling's going to come and replace you with one that does everything I want.
Wouldn't they be targeting the kids who are nicer and more innocent?
Possibly, but again, you know, trying to get children to obey, it doesn't have to make sense. It just requires authority. Or
Fair.
fear. You know, and of course, there's an episode upcoming in season 6 called "The Times They Are a Changeling,"
Yeah.
where apparently the main 6 are going up to the Crystal Empire, and they're all afraid because there's a changeling on the loose. And I desperately want more clues to canon changelings. I'm almost done. We have.
I just want to point out, if you noticed in season 6
Mhm.
premiere, in the background while
Yes, I did
there's a
know.
little changeling.
What about the changeling in Slice of Life?
Yeah, we see that,
Maybe
but
he's the good changeling.
right, we see those references and inclusions, but they haven't done that fully. And actually, I'm desperately, like, everyone's talking like, oh, I don't want to see these guys reformed. I don't want to see this, like, I want villains. But
Yes.
within the show, I like the idea that we don't need Chrysalis to reform. Chrysalis can stay evil and maniacal and all that good stuff. I'd like to see some good changelings, though. Ones that aren't mind destroying, because we know on the show they're not. They laugh, they have emotions, they laugh at each other. We see references to some kind of individuality amongst changelings, though we don't know maybe what their mindset of things are. So maybe having some good changelings would also deliver a message I think we really desperately need nowadays. That just because you belong to one particular group doesn't make you inherently one thing. Just because you're a changeling doesn't mean you're evil. I think we could all I think our society needs that lesson now a little bit more than it's ever probably needed it.
Especially with little kids growing up.
Especially with little kids
Yes.
growing up.
You should pitch that to Hasbro.
Yes.
I remember that, like, the reference back in the previous slides of hive mind. Like, maybe the group of changelings we saw in season 2 were part of like a hive mind chrysalis, and then like back in their own land, there's another like kind of a small town of changelings that have like minds, like
Yeah.
like a new mindset.
That could
And maybe
totally
a
work.
changeling kind of we saw in Slice of Life wants to be included with the ponies, wants to be accepted, and it kind of sits there in a wedding, kind of waiting for love. I just want to be loved.
Well, actually, on Twitter, one of the writers, when asked why that changeling was there, he described a friend of Matilda's.
And
What's
and,
the story behind that?
and he was kind of sitting
You
there all
upset.
innocent, like, what?
Right. All right. So we have just a little bit more to go. So the next thing we're going to be talking about, we talked about the changelings, and I'll be glad to talk about the changelings more. We're actually going to talk about Twilight's ascension and its connection to the idea of enlightened rule. You know, monarchies throughout human history have generally justified their existence and absolute authority through the notion of the great chain of being, or the divine right to rule. The fact that you are born into a station and it is by God's will that you rule over this. You know, the mandate of heaven in Chinese mythology. You know, and this notion held sway throughout much of European history until the 18th century. That's the 1700s for people who might not know. And basically with the start of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment saw the rejection of previous social norms, such as the divine right of kings, in favor of concepts such as the social contract, which was forwarded by Locke, and popular sovereignty, which was popularized by Rousseau. While many democracies were formed based on Enlightenment ideals, including the United States, monarchies also flourished with the philosophy of enlightened absolutism. And basically the Enlightenment thoughts were the rejection of the divine right to rule because God had no role in statecraft as far as the Enlightenment thinkers were concerned. You know, actually the majority of them were either anti-religious or straight outright atheists. But you saw kind of the rejection of that notion, and you saw that reflected in quite a few rulers as well, with Catherine the Great of Russia, Frederick the Great of Prussia, Maria Theresa of Austria, and Napoleon Bonaparte of France. You know, they all they created new restrictions, new laws. They upended society by creating an isolated state, like a secular statecraft, which up until that point was basically unheard of, particularly for monarchies, because if God didn't give you your right to rule, who did? The people did. You know, and these monarchs excelled in many of the intellectual and philosophical fields, and they used their intellect and experience to justify why they had the right to rule. That because they were clever, because they were smart, because they knew a lot of different things, and because they knew how to delegate. They earned the right to rule. You know, and as Frederick the Great put it, and he's generally considered probably not only one of the greatest monarchs in history, but the greatest of the Enlightenment rulers. You know, he described it as a ruler's responsibility was to serve the people. To be a monarch, for a monarch was to be the first servant of the people, and that's his own quote. And you know, the idea that intellectualism and achievement are what you use for the right to rule actually really parallels and matches the entire arc and development of Twilight Sparkle. You know, where Celestia and Luna became princesses as a political means to ensure peace, a divine right, if you will, because they were alicorns, Twilight became a princess by earning the position through strength of character. Her natural talents alone could not take her there, only her growth and understanding and responsibility of others could. The role of princess through Twilight became meritocratic and an achievement available to all. Like, it's entirely possible we might get future alicorns. Maybe. I don't think... Hey, if it sells...
That comment where the unicorns like stole Ringo's wings to get out.
Mm-hmm. That's
Cannon
it.
choose to be a Pegasus.
Yep.
Maybe Trixie could hold the Alcor amulet again and wants to become an Alcor just to take on Wrinkle's pain.
Maybe, but I think if there was going to be another Alicorn, Starlight's probably the most applicable candidate.
Or sunset.
Or
Sunset.
maybe
Sunset
I think
before
Sunset's
Star-
already a
Star.
human equivalent.
Yeah.
Alicorn.
Well, we did see her sprout wings in the first movie.
Right.
Well, technically those are wings of light and not
Now we got just a little bit, and then we'll have about maybe a half-hour
Question
Q&A
they
comments.
won't know until
So
they
we
go
move on to the Cutie Mark Crusaders. Now, a cutie mark is clearly supposed to be a deeply personal and almost divine aspect of a pony's life. All ponies are destined to acquire ones, and those who do not possess one yet are ostracized and vilified. It is this concept of eventuality, CMC are told time and again to simply wait for their cutie marks. It's your destiny. Just wait. You're gonna get it when you get it. However, this principle of eventuality actually reflects a notion called predestination, which is kind of the idea that all choices have been decided for us. It's the ultimate anti-free will, that there is no free will, that everything is destined to occur. So, whatever you do, it's gonna happen. Just wait. The refusal to wait on the CMC's part, actually, and the crusade that they create for a cutie mark rejects that notion in favor of a new one that's far more, a view that's much more popular nowadays, that of self-determinism. Self-determinism is a principle which demands basically absolute agency on the part of all members of society. And because almost all of equestrian society supports the notion of predestination, even the main six, their immediate idea is that they were destined to meet. Ancient prophecy was being fulfilled so that they could get the elements of harmony. But the CMC actually stand out amongst that idea. Like, clearly the show implies a lot of destiny stuff as well, but the CMC is the antithesis of that because they represent a truly free approach to one's own destiny. And they even kind of match up quite nicely with Star Swirl's Cutie Mark Destiny spell. It's all about trying to figure out working towards one's destiny as opposed to waiting for it to happen. All right, and now we move on to the final of our topics that we'll be discussing before the Q&A. And I'm sure there's quite a few of you guys out there who are chomping at the bit to comment and tell me on.
Starlit Glimmer.
Yes. Starlit Glimmer and the extremism of equality. Because cutie marks represent a physical wait a minute. Back up. As noticed by nearly everyone who watched the season 5 opener, Starlit Glimmer and her philosophy of equality is clearly supposed to draw inspiration from the ideas of Karl Marx and Marxism, and to extension, communism. And interesting, the central tenet of Marxism is that cultural attitudes and social expectations represent what he referred to them as opiates, which are designed to alienate and oppress lower class populations and force them to obey rules and regulations which might not always represent their best interests. Cutie marks, therefore, are a physical representation of something that restricts and regulates your life. It's your destiny. You are destined to do whatever your cutie mark tells you to. And, well, what if you're an earth pony who has a cutie mark in magic? Oh. What if you are a Pegasi, you cannot fly?
Maybe a physical disability like Skrulin.
Possibly, and so you see actually a lot of these correlations, how cutie marks affect and reflect a pony's place in equestrian society is quite distinct with how the CMC are treated by the adults, by their own peers. So basically, under a Marxist interpretation, Starlight and her followers would be correct in their rejection of cutie marks and the social expectations that would follow, because they purposefully limit and restrict what you can and cannot do. And if you have them or don't have them, it massively curtails your ability to function in equestrian society. By removing them, one could argue that everybody would no longer be bound by those restrictions. And that's the central tenet basically behind, Marxism, behind the Marxism, and where it kind of ties in with Starlight's philosophy of equality. Now, ironically enough, though, when you try to put in Marxism and communist philosophy into practice, you get some interesting qualities, and we actually see that match with Starlight and her town. Her attempts to overthrow the social authority of Cutie Marx is quickly overtaken by her desire to maintain her own power and authority, which of course perpetuates, most of the societies that were Marxist throughout the 20th and 21st century. Soviet Russia, North Korea, Vietnam, and China. You saw these switches over from the ideal is what mattered until, the maintaining of power in the name of that ideal. A good way to kind of put that is a revolution against tyranny becomes a tyranny out of fear of counter-revolution. And that would be the conclusion of my presentation. How about we which I'll leave up for everyone, and would anybody like to have some questions and comments? Yes, you in the back.
Now, we don't see them very much, but what are your ideas on what bat ponies, if there actually are bat ponies, or if it's just like a spell on or something in society? Because I would think that maybe they're just, they do the same thing that Pegasus do, but they take over at night when they're asleep. But what are your ideas on that?
I'm under the opinion that they are sort of a variation on Pegasi. Like they might have had a separate evolution from Pegasi. They might have developed independently. I have my own personal headcanons, but I want to save those for my fan fictions because I work on my fan fictions. But I do believe that they are a evolved or maybe even a modified version of the Pegasi. Anyone else? Where was everyone who was chomping at the bit for a question?
Well, I think the only reason we got Starlight Glimmer is because they couldn't give us Sunset Shimmer.
Right.
Yeah.
That is an interesting idea, and clearly all of these characters are supposed to be representations of Twilight gone down a different path. What if Twilight had been more obsessed with personal power than friendship or her studies? Sunset Shimmer.
Do you think Sunset, if she came back to the Pony World, would be an alicorn now? Not because she had light wings in the last movie, but because of her the past is not today thing.
Possibly. I'm not too sure about that one. It would certainly be interesting. I'd definitely like to see, whether or not Sunset would become an alicorn. But again, it's kind of up in the air. I don't think they would, just because her being an alicorn would draw too much away from. It would probably just draw too much away from any plot you were trying to put forward, unless that was the plot. And they're not going to put Sunset Shimmer in the TV show because it would require far too much.
And so they already have a replacement for her, which was Starlight.
Starlight does have some connections, but she does have sort of her own unique spin on it. Her backstory's not very good, but the character's great. Love the way she interacts with everybody.
Her color scheme is annoying.
I think if Sunset Shimmer came back, it would be kind of like say out of character of the show, since Question Girls is kind of like a movie spinoff series, and it'd be like an exposition.
That she's kind of the replacement for Twilight.
It would rely too heavily on the idea of, hey, you guys saw Equestria Girls, right? You guys saw Equestria Girls, right? Oh no? Well, you're not going to enjoy this episode. You're not going to do that.
Yeah, there are people who don't like the question, and I doubt they would like it.
That and
I feel like I missed
that and
something like-
Sunset can't come back because she's kind of the Twilight of the group now.
But then again,
there's
they're
that
all
other
supposed to
Twilight,
be,
but-
they're all supposed to be Twilight knockoffs. Even Trixie is technically a Twilight knockoff, because her entire point is she's supposed to be a counterpoint to Twilight.
Foil.
We discussed this in my British literature class of foils when we were in the Sherlock Holmes books, that I think Trixie is kind of like a foil to Twilight. Well, like kind of like how Twilight would be if she was at her worst. While like kind of like Trixie is the one who brags and shows off her magic, while Twilight is very humble and only uses magic for necessary events.
Right, yeah, and that, you know, the concept of foil is a perfect way to think about it. And it also might explain why Trixie and Starlight get along so well. Two foils.
Like maybe because they're both foils to Twilight, but at least in Starlight's case, she wasn't trying to be a foil to Twilight. She just wanted everyone to be equal, and Twilight like destroyed that concept of life.
Right.
Not necessarily destroyed, but say this is the better way. So I was like, nope.
Anyone else? Yep.
So do you think in like a future question maybe they should include a scene where Starlight, Sunset, sorry, does go back to Equestria to finally like, 'cause they would, her entire arc starts with her kind of betraying Celestia and going into the one. Wouldn't that be a good attachment at the end of the arc that she goes back and kind of confronts Celestia and like apologizes and tries to get over the her?
I think that actually would be a very good idea. I'd like to see, you know, it'd be kind of interesting actually to have an Equestria Girls story. You know, we saw what happens when two worlds combine too much in the Reflection story arc in the comics. Maybe having an Equestria Girls equivalent to that would be very interesting. You know, a villain that appears in the human world coming over to the Equestria world and having to be dealt with.
Maybe human Starlight in the human world.
Maybe.
Because we see that the humans are kind of like the proto-human counterparts, but where's human Sunset? Well, I like the real human Sunset.
Well, I read a story where basically she died like a couple years back.
Or maybe human Sunset, maybe Pony turned human Sunset kind of combined in some way. Like maybe there's already a Sunset Shimmer at one school. Maybe she got a little older and went off to college.
Well, I mean, by technicality, she's much old.
Yeah.
The Sunset in the TV show, or she's not in the TV show, sorry, from Equestria is much older than Twilight. She's clearly supposed to be about, like, she's probably around, like, Shining's age.
Yeah, she's like about 5 or 6 years, even more than that older.
So when she came over to the mirror,
She's
Sunset's
much
counterpart-
older than Twilight because I think if the comics basically had her go off to Equestria Girls World before Twilight became Celestia's student.
Right, Celestia was, like,
So she's
still a
at
affiliate
least like 20 years older.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, the thing is, and this is what makes me so happy because spike shipping, is that there is no set ages. The show creators have confirmed that the age that you think they are, that's their age. Like, the characters are much more mature than whatever age you're thinking and much younger than you're thinking. It doesn't really, it matters much more how they behave rather than their ages, because there was never any kind of
I
establishment.
mean, ponies mature faster than humans anyway.
And dragons mature at whatever speed they bloody well feel like.
It's and with your like when I read like the comics, I kind of thought maybe like maybe an Anakin Skywalker parallel. She's kind of like maybe a teenager, while Twilight she's just a kid. Like Sunset, like she thinks she knows everything, kind of like a teenager does, like more than their authority figure. That they want more. They want to. They want to do more because they know everything. Know everything.
I can see that, yeah.
Because I don't think like a grown, mature mayor like Twilight, I think it was, would be acting like that.
Right.
You'd be surprised.
Maybe.
Right, I mean, but then again, this is kind of a very, very mystic world. Hello.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I'm
Alright, so.
just waiting for the line to die down before going to the cosplay judging.
Oh, well, thanks for sticking around. I thought you guys just liked listening.
Yeah, because I have a lot.
That's right. So,
So, I have a question, but I don't remember a character's name, so you're gonna help me out on this. But who is Starlight Glimmer's childhood friend's name?
Sunburst.
Sunburst, that's it, right.
Yes.
Do you think he has any connection with Starswirl the Bearded? Now, since the Journal of Two Sisters established that he got a time travel spell that effectively worked for extended periods of time, and hinted that he knew more about the future, perhaps maybe it could be because he's been there in a younger form because of the age spell side effect of his prototype, because of his prototype time travel spell?
That could certainly
Are you
be
saying he's
interesting.
sunburst?
We don't see.
Maybe is what I'm saying.
I don't think so.
We don't know,
because
like, I
Tony's
don't think
coat does
Starswirl's
change
original
color.
hair was white.
Well,
So
yes, but
maybe-
Like, if
we
I-
don't
if-
really. I mean, we only have Granny Smith to judge coat color, and for all we know, she could die. So.
Oh, no. We know her color. We know that she was blonde, like she had Applejack's hair.
Right, you're right.
No, coat color, not main color.
Yeah.
Right, sorry. Mate.
Yeah.
My theory is like if you go into deep read Journal of the Two Sisters after he did like the time travel spell, it described him having a short brown beard.
Mhm.
Yeah. Also, I think Star Swirl might be like Starburst's grandfather. And I think at this point, since Star Swirl's like a mortal unicorn, he's probably dead by now.
Actually, I don't think he is, because he specifically
Wibbly
had the
wobbly, timey-wimey.
capabilities to time travel. He perfected his time travel spell, but he was basically swore that he wouldn't be telling anybody about what happened, because he couldn't mess with the time continuum. Basically, they basically say that.
Or maybe he's like Starburst, or I mean Sunburst, where he's just like hiding in seclusion until like something happens where they need him.
The thing is,
So,
though, that
space-time.
space-time, really. I think if Starburst was a descendant, he would have the magical talent as well as his amazing researching abilities.
It's possible.
I mean, he said
but-
he can't perform any of the stuff he knows how to do.
Right, and I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that Sunburst is just, he's a bookworm with no practical application experience.
Kind of like
you know,
season 1 Twilight.
He's a perfect
Well,
researcher.
not even that, like Twilight could do things in season 1. She could cast spells that nobody would even think about casting. So she
Her
could
talent is
match-
magic.
Sunburst
His talent
had another
is-
point. Learning?
In a little bit, possibly. You could see Sunburst as a foil.
What do you think? Learning is his talent?
Yeah, his
Or
talent
research?
was researching, picking up information. That's what he could do. He can study magic like nobody's business. Not so good at performing.
Because in season 6, like you gave like the right spells needed to save the Crystal Empire, including that little spell of like bringing in Flurry Heart's like raw abilities.
Right.
Yeah, funny you should actually mention that you think that a special talent is researching, because the moment of the Cutie Mark Epiphany always has to do with, what the special talent is. And his Cutie Mark Epiphany occurred when he was casting a spell, not when he was studying or learning something.
But wasn't he moving books with that stuff?
It was moving books, but it was still a spell and not learning. He was not trying to find the information in the books, he was trying to get them out of the way of hitting Starlight.
Well, if you look at Applejack's moment, where she got her epiphany, she wasn't on the farm. She wasn't actually farming. She realized that's what she enjoyed. So
I don't
it doesn't
see-
necessarily.
Well,
I don't
have
see a
to be the
correlation
same.
with that moment being he realizing that he wants to learn,
I'd like
Because
to
he's
point-
saving another pony's life at the
I'd like to
moment.
point
That's what
out
he's
It
doing.
may have been a
that he did
fascination
that.
with magic, but not
Hey
the
guys,
talent.
I'm sorry, but
Sorry.
we can't be having a debate back there.
Right.
Because
Sorry.
I wouldn't
Sorry.
be able to pick it up on the camera.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I love your guys' enthusiasm.
I would
but-
just like to point out that all that we see that happened after that amazing feat of telekinesis is he shepherded off to the school. So we never
Yeah.
really get to see anything beyond that.
Yeah, that's sort of the weird thing. It'd be interesting if we get to see Sunburst again, and I'm sure in the times there are changeling, we'll get to see him. Maybe we'll get a little bit more information about him. At the moment, up in the air. You in the back.
believe that Crystal Empire is a separate nation to Equestria, or do you think there's an indication that it's part of Equestria?
I do think that it is an independent nation.
Puppet government.
It was ruled by Princess Moray for a while before it got usurped by Sombra. I think with the acquisition of, or the ascension of Cadence to the Crystal Empire, that it's probably now like a vassal state to Equestria.
Puppet government.
Basically, yeah. You know, it is one of the many thrall states to the Eternal Celestial Empire.
Protectorate, maybe?
Possibly even a protectorate.
We learned about that in history class, that maybe Crystal Empire is not under the divine rule of Celestia and Luna, but a protectorate said, like with the U.S., they're protecting, I think it was Puerto
Panama?
Rico, like during the brink of World War I. That if Spain attacked that state, then America could fight back.
Right, but I do think at the current moment it probably is part of Equestria since it was selected to host the Equestrian Games. It was selected to, hold the Equestrian Princess Summit. It participates in massive amounts of. It participates in equestrian government in a way that a protectorate wouldn't. So it's probably, it might be a
State in the Union.
It might be a state of the union because we don't have any actual, the only clues we have towards what kind of government Equestria has is in the comics where the butch guy that Cadence goes to the homecoming dance thing with talks about his dad being a senator.
We don't have, that's not canon because they don't have high school.
Right, they don't have high schools. Well, maybe bigger cities do. I mean, that could totally be a
Bigger city idea.
a bigger city idea. Welcome to Ponyville. You don't need none of that fancy book learning.
I mean, Terrence does seem like from a bit more rural in a way.
Yeah, I mean, and of course you can also see the female to male population. Yeah.
What if, since the Equestrian Games had representatives from each town, do you think they're more like a city-state thing, like in ancient Greece?
I do actually think that. I think that I think it is sort of a federated monarchy. I think that each state kind of runs their own things. Ponyville just so happens to be run by a democracy, but I think you could probably get things like Prince Blue Blood. Maybe he's the ruler of Canterlot.
Hopefully not.
I imagine maybe a mafia boss is running Manhattan.
Well, since he has the title Prince.
Well, the nobility are in charge of.
He has a title. Wasn't a character. What?
In Fallout Equestria, there's the theory that each head of the noble families it has the title of prince. And they're responsible for running day-to-day activities, so the presidents just don't have to deal with it all.
Right. I mean that's certainly an idea, although it's certainly One Piece sounding a little bit. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Punching Blue Blood face.
That would be so fun.
But
Anyway.
although it did kind of get us comeuppance in season 1 where he just splattered cake all over it.
Right.
I would like to see him come back and see him get pummeled like slapstick.
Well, I don't like the idea that Blue Blood can be a jerk, he can be snobbish, but I don't want him to be treated cruelly. I don't want anything bad to happen
I
to
kind of
him.
see him as Gaston in Beauty and the Beast.
Possibly.
Well, he's a womanizer, but he still thinks very highly of himself.
Right.
Yeah.
He's still the town hero. Blue Blood, we've seen Rarity interact with Blue Blood before.
He's a jerk.
In the Sweet and Elite. They're in that whole musical number.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah, you get instances where he's at the equestrian games, So those things do appear and show up from time to time. And honestly, I don't want the idea of there being an inherently evil villain. Because people aren't inherently evil. They're just not. What's Sombra's reason for being the way he is.
Well, according to the show's canon, we don't know, but fiendship is magic. It has some kind of explanation, but I found out like not canon to the shows.
Right. Which again, if we can talk about the comics for just a second, those comics are so good. I wish they were canon.
Well,
Are we confusing? Are we?
I admit that.
Are we confusing Blue Blood with Fleur-de-Lis and?
Early and fancy pants.
Yes, thank you.
No, he actually does appear. He's part of the group that's sending off the ship. Like when they smash the wine glass into the ship during the Sweet
And it
Blade
didn't
song.
break.
He
And it
actually.
didn't break. It's bad luck for the bottomless break.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think anyway, like I like the little thing that Prince Blueblood, like he's kind of like the secondary ruler, so it stays taking care of like the local events, so the princesses don't have to deal with like christening ships or something like that. Like
Yeah, he takes care of Canterlot and they take care of Equestria in general.
I could see that. Ultimately, we're never really going to know because I highly doubt My Little Pony is going to take time out of its day to explain the deep and intricate political environment of the question.
Despite what we will.
since the target demographic is like 6 to 7-year-old girls.
Clearly, well,
I think I've given up on
I'm
that
not a
target.
girl, but when I was 6 and 7, I was interested in the deep political
Well, yeah, but I
You
mean,
were also
the
reading
show is
encyclopedias.
made for little girls, and they're not going to get into like a political debate for little kids.
Right, no.
They're gonna be more interested in, the action, adventure, the pretty,
Besides
Pretty smart.
watching the political debates, that's going to be for news.
If kids want to watch political debates, then turn on the news.
Yeah. Well,
They can see Trump being.
we have about 10 minutes. I'm actually going to close this up now, give the guys more time to patch things up. So,
Oh yeah,
thank you guys.
Back to the earlier panels, I had this one about like Rachel Rezon versus Corchero.
Right,
But
we can talk about that afterward. I will gladly listen to you there. But at the moment, if you guys want to check out this video, or you want to check out this panel again, I'll have it up on my website. You guys can on YouTube. You can just type in the Brony Critic. You should be able to find this one and my The Brony Critic's Guide to Better Fan Fiction, which I did earlier today. Also,
I'll get to hear myself.
yeah, you'll get to hear yourself. Yep. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll be here throughout the day, so if you guys want to tune in and stop by, that would be fantastic. Thank you guys for coming and listening to me for 2 hours. Some of you guys maybe for 4 hours. Yeah, I really had a great time.